Okay, so we need to talk about a couple things that are a little bit different about this homework than the other ones. So 8-5 is the last day of the semester, and as a result of being the last day of the semester, it is in fact going to be the last day you can turn in a homework. Given the time frame that these have to be graded in, I don't have extra time to give you. 8-5 is the absolute positively latest date you can turn in a homework. Note that you have 2 weeks to do this homework. It shows up in week 3 and it's due at the end of week 5. And there should be no excuse for you turning in a homework late. The only reason students give me for trying to say that they're turning a homework late is they have something last minute they have to do. Well, you shouldn't start your homework that late. Okay? I'm 100% serious. Under no circumstances will I allow this homework to turn late because I simply won't be able to grade it fast enough. It and the final exam are due essentially at the same time. And as a result, I will not have time to grade it in time otherwise. You need to have a working Spring Boot project with your completed and corrected server-side code from homework 1. Note that you can absolutely positively use my solution. There's nothing to prevent you from doing that. Feel free to use it. Not even an issue. What I'm looking for is for you to turn the Angular code folder. Only remove node modules. Remove the folder just like I do in class. I realize that makes your project not run. I realize it. But it goes from 150 to 200 megabyte download to a 1 or 2 megabyte download, which makes everyone's life easier. Furthermore, if you're using the current version of Angular, like you all should be doing, we'll note that later. If you use an old version of Angular, it's almost always a dead giveaway that you're cheating. Or that you're using code you found rather than the correct rather than code you developed. In either case, it's pretty simple just to copy your code into a working folder with node modules already there, and it should just run. It's very, very simple to run your code on my end if you do it correctly. Note, unless you need to make changes in your server-side code, other than, of course, the course statement at the beginning, I do not wish to see your server-side code unless you made changes at some point. We'll talk about it. Only graduate students would have a need to do this, and even they don't need to do it. We'll talk about that later. Overall Angular, you're going to create an application using Angular using your name. So I would create a Ruth Michael Homework 3 application. Pretty simple to do. You're going to create a movie class with appropriate fields. Note those fields should model the fields that are returned from your front end. Create a movie service that models the endpoints from your Spring application, focusing on get all movies. Get a specific movie, add a movie, edit a movie, and delete a movie endpoints. Pretty basic. For your components, you have 4 of them. You have a main component. You have to create a component, but that's going to be your main landing page. Is going to be a list of movies, which shows only the MIDs and names of the movies in a nicely decorated table. Just use the CSS you did from homework 2. You can use mine from homework 2. I don't really care. Create a detailed view of a movie, shows all fields via component. So you create another component for a detail view, create another component for an ad, create another component for an edit. The add movie form allows the user to create a new movie using the form structure from homework 2. Quick point here, I want you to validate using Angular like we did in class. To allow the user to create a new movie using the form structure from just like we did in class, according to the rules set forth in homework 1, validate all fields. Please use the same basic structure we did in class, right? So remember, on the drop-down list, we don't really have to do any validation, but we do absolutely need to do validation for the MID, the name, and the price. And we should do according to the same way we did before. So if they leave it blank, you show an error message showing, hey, you can't leave this blank. If it's a movie ID and they give you something that's not a number, you're going to report, hey, this is not a number, what have you. Make sure to do the differentiated reporting just like we did in class. Really, there's nothing special here. Note, for add movie, you do also have this notion, you have one error check that you have to do. If somebody submits um, an ad, tries to add a movie with a movie ID that already exists, it should come back and say the SID, the movie ID already exists, pick another one. You can do that just like we did in class. Couple things I want to make sure that you know of. It says validate, da 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 da. Make sure that you disable the submit buttons unless everything is valid. And do the same for edit movie, except that you're going to do it based on a currently existing movie. You're going to not allow for the MID to be modified, just disable it. But validate using the same rules as you did the other ones. It's actually copy and paste if you use it separately. If you do this the right way, the edit one just comes from the detail view and the add movie form kind of combined. Um, it's usually relatively easy. Obviously, as you're building your components, you'll have to do routing to make all these work, to make these things all work. So don't forget to do that as well. Finally, we're going to create the website for the movie list. You're going to create a link to each movie from the list. So if you have a movie list, you're going to have a way to click on an ID or a name or whatever, however you choose to do it, so that we can go to the detail view of that movie. In the page for the detail movies, create buttons to edit or delete the given movie. If it's successful in edit or delete, if it's edit or add, if successful, we go back to the detail view. If we delete the given movie, we go back to the list, just like we did in class. On all pages, create links back to the list and add movie pages as necessary. Obviously, on the add movie page, you don't necessarily go back to that one. But for all pages, use an external style sheet. What I recommend doing is just using the one from homework 2. Pretty simple. Graduate students, again, have to do this work. Undergraduate students may do this work for extra credit, but make sure you do this. In addition to the above, the fields that appear in the list should be sortable, similar to what we did in class. For this assignment, you may sort locally or remotely. Note that if you sort using the backend, you'll need to submit your backend as well, right? So if you sort via Spring Boot, make sure to provide that backend that shows that being sorted. Create a search bar, which allows you to list all movies that match the search criteria, but includes all fields of the movies. For this assignment, you can sort locally or remotely, say on the backend. However, if you sort using Spring Boot, you'll make sure to submit that as well. Create a side navigation bar, which allows the user to select a genre and then show all movies which match the given criteria. Note, in the original assignment, while you don't have a movie service that has get all movies for a genre, the backend actually does have that. So you don't need to submit your, if you do these other, if you do 1 and 2 remotely, locally, and 15 or part 3 does not require you to do anything on the back end if you've done your back end correctly from homework 1. And homework 1 already includes this. But to create a side navigation bar that allows the user to select a genre. So you have a list of genres in the sidebar, and then show all movies that match the given criteria. So if they click on it, you get a list of movies that match their given criteria. Note this should be done remotely. Make calls to the server and use URL parameters to identify the criteria. Note 1, 2, and 3 can all be sort of combined together to work appropriately. You just need to think about how you're going to do those endpoints and so forth. Remember, if you do things locally, 1 and 2 could just be methods that you send along. However, because 3 is remotely, you're going to need to use URLs in order to do this. So you're going to need to use URL criteria as well. But that does not preclude you from using URL criteria to do 1 and 2 as well, to remember that criteria for 1 and 2 as well. So just be in there. Note that while I do say you do not need to submit your backend at any point, if you change your backend in order to make one of these things or all of these things work, then I need to see it. So don't forget to include it if I need to see it, but do not include it unless I need to see it. Finally, the project or zip file is not named correctly, 10% comes off. Anything that I ask to be named a certain way, if it doesn't not name that way. Note that if you use an older version of Angular, it will take 20% off your total score. Some people will still do this. Doesn't matter how many times I tell you not to do it. If you use patterns not learned in class, you'll get a 0. Please be sure when you're using forms to use template driven forms like we do in class. If you use other types of form mechanisms, I will in fact give you a 0. So please do not do this. Note, you need to create an edit, delete, add page. So what some people do is they create the detailed view and then they turn that detailed view into an edit, add, all those things. Do not do that. Do not combine these 4 components. Keep those 4 components separate, just like we did in class. There's a reason for this. It makes it easier for me to grade, so please do not do that. If the project doesn't contain sufficient comments, if you do something wonky, I want to know why you did it wonky. Wonky just means weird or inappropriate. Don't do that. So comments, this isn't a time because of Angular that you're going to get multiple times. You're going to have comments. But if you're doing something weird or strange or odd or unusual, please throw a comment in there just so I can follow what you're trying to do. Again, this is an individual assignment, and what you turn in should represent your own work. If you share your artifact with another student and that student turns in your artifact, you will both get a 0, no questions asked. Many students get 0s on homeworks. And they say so-and-so, wanted to see something and he just turned in or he or just turned in my homework. He or she just turned in my homework. And then you're both going to get 0s. No questions asked. It's automatic. Finally, don't try to do this at last minute. This homework must be turned in by 8/5 at midnight, no exceptions. The solution will appear very shortly after the homework is due, and that's simply because that is the last date of the class. And in order to get your grades finalized and in a place where you guys can see your grades and so forth, they need to be in on time. All right, thank you so much. Y'all have a great day.